Okay guys, today I'm going to be discussing four-wheel drive tyres and wheels and why I went from these to these. This part of the build for me is really easy because all I had to do was pay someone to fit the new wheels and tyres. So what I thought I would do is just provide a little bit of a guide for tyre selection in regards to four-wheel drive tyres and wheels. I'll explain why I went for the width of tyre that I did, why I went for the diameter of tyre that I did, why I went for an all-terrain instead of a mud terrain, why I went from a 17-inch rim to a 16-inch rim, why I stuck with alloys instead of changing to steels, as well as how you can find the right tyre width, diameter and wheel size for your car and the tyre that you're trying to fit to it. We'll go over wheel aspect ratios and what a few of these numbers mean. I'll cover the load ratings of the rim. We'll talk about selecting the right wheels for your car, so you find out your stud pattern, your centre bore size. I'll explain why I went for the Falken Wildpeaks, why I went with the CSA wheels. On top of that, I'm going to weigh everything. So we'll see how much weight we've added to the car with 5 wheels and 5 tyres, and it's all unsprung weight. So we'll just see what that totals up to, as well as the total cost of everything that I've bought. Now the reason that I wanted to upgrade all of my wheels and tyres is not because I was running out of tread or anything like that, but I did want a slightly larger tyre. The original ones were 265, 65, 17. So you can see that is about 777 millimeters in diameter. And I wanted to go up to the equivalent of a 275, 70, 17, which is about 804 millimeters or thereabouts. What I've done is the same thing, except I've done it with dropping rim size. So these are a 265, 75, 16, which is the same overall diameter as a 265, 70, 17. So I've gone from about 30.5 to 31.5 in diameter, but because I've dropped the rim size, I have less rim that is at risk of being damaged, and I have more sidewall to bag out when I let the tyre pressures down. I could have gone for a 265, 70, 16 and got the same size diameter. It would have had slightly less sidewall, but at the same time I also wanted 5 new wheels just to get an increased load rating. Because I was changing the wheels, I decided to go for the 16s. Now, a large part of this for me was just finalising the build, because I need to calibrate the ultra gauge that I've got on the A pillar there so I can get the correct fuel calibration for the long range tank that I installed before. At the moment all the calibrations are out of whack, so this is just part of finalising everything, and it is one of the last, if not the last big ticket item on this car. So in regards to keeping it to 31.5 inches, could have gone up to a 32.5 or 33 inch tyre, but there's a lot of reasons I didn't. First one is the weight. Second one is I think they look stupid on this type of car. Third one is the reliability issues. The fourth issue is the costs rising due to the massive increase in fuel economy. On top of that, larger tyres change all your gearing, so if you have downhill descent control, for example, and you go to 33s, it's not going to roll down as slow as the factory OEM tyres which it was designed to work with. This is only a slight increase. I've noticed the tiniest differences in where the car revs sit at about 70 to 74 kilometers an hour. The driving experience is basically the same. I've noticed the braking feels a little bit worse, but that's only because the tyres are new. I'll probably get used to that within a few days. I've no use for bigger tyres. You've got unsprung weight and the potential for doing damage is even greater, especially with the CV angles that I've got at the front here. So for me it's about reliability, control, fuel economy. It's more than most people need. To be honest, the 265, 65, 17 was enough diameter for most people, including myself, but this is just that slight improvement without going too far the wrong way. So I knew what tyre size I wanted in diameter, but I wasn't 100% sure on the width of tyre that I wanted. I was highly considering going to a 235 85 16, which is the same diameter basically. It's within a mil or two, but obviously it is 30 mil thinner. Now what this does is it reduces the weight, which increases reliability. It decreases rolling resistance, which increases the fuel economy. And because the rolling resistance is lower for a skinnier tyre, they actually perform better off-road, except for situations where you are climbing through a rut, for example, where a wider tyre might grip the outside of the rut better. But in general off-road situations, the skinnier tyres give you a better platform because they're not trying to push through as much because they are thinner. You can't change from a 265 to a 235 on the same rim. You have different width rims for different width tyres. So I did consider going 235 because these were considered really good in the wet. I thought that I could actually reduce that contact patch on the road without losing too much traction or handling. And to be honest, I probably could have, but in the end I decided just to keep it the same as what I had from factory, which were 265s as well. Now, the reason that I've gone for all-terrains instead of mud terrains, and there are plenty of good reasons, but basically I don't need mud terrains. I don't plan on going through bog holes or through mud. I'm not doing any tough four-wheel drive tracks. This is more for touring. So with the all-terrains we get better fuel economy. It is quieter, and they are quiet. We get better performance on the road. We get better performance in wet weather, which makes the whole driving experience a lot better. I spend a lot more time on the road than I do on the tracks, so all-terrains are definitely the way to go. The reason I went for the Falken Wildpeak is because of the good reviews from people that actually use the tyres. Websites such as tyrereview.com, they are one of the highest rated, if not the highest rated tyre for the all-terrain section. So these are rated really highly, especially for wet weather, which is important to me because I want to maintain control of the car as best as possible. I've added a bit of weight. I want the braking distance to be as low as possible. I want the handling to be as good as possible. And I want to try and keep this thing on the road as easily as possible, especially considering the amount of money that I've spent on it now. It just so happened that when I was looking to buy it, that Bob Jane had these buy 3 get 1 free. So I did that. I paid for 4 basically and got the 5th one for free. Ordinarily, this size of tyre for the Falken Wildpeaks is advertised as $398 each. Once you include that free one, they basically worked out to $318 each because I paid for the 5. Now, I've mentioned that these are 265, 75, 16. What this means is they have a nominal width of 265mm. The sidewall is 75% of that on each side. So to figure out the total diameter, it's 265 times that 0.75, because it's an aspect ratio, a percentage, times that by 2, because you've got it both sides of the wheel. Then you get 16-inch rim, so 16 times 25.4 to convert it to millimetres. And then you go that result, add these two results, and that's your total diameter. If you want to turn that back into inches, divide that number by 25.4, and that will convert your millimetres to inches. So there are all sorts of different widths and aspect ratios available for all sorts of different rims. I'm not going to go through them all because there are hundreds. If you want to compare different tyre sizes, go to this website here, just type in Google tyre size comparison, the top result, and then punch in the numbers of what you currently have, and you'll see a generated image from front on for the width and side on for the profile, and you get a good idea of just how big those tyres are in comparison. It even gives you a percentage increase in size, so you'll know how your speedo is affected, for example, and how your mileage might be affected, because your odometer technically won't be accurate anymore. Now, if we look just next to the aspect ratio, we've got this 123/120S. That is a load rating and a speed rating. The number 123/120 might be confusing, but that's because some of these all-terrains, or a lot of them as well as the mud terrains, are light truck tyre constructions. So the reason they have 2 load ratings here is the 123 rating is when the tyre is used by itself. The 120 is when it's used in a dual wheel setup, like you'll see at the back of a truck. Now, the reason the 120 is lower for the dual wheel setup is because if one tyre pops, it needs to be able to carry part of the weight from the tyre that popped. So that is generally derated for the second number there. But on your standard four-wheel drive, we're looking at the first number here, 1, 2, 3, and there are heaps of charts for this. Here's one, for example, from Bob Jane. They show all the different load ratings here, and 1, 2, 3 is a load rating of 1550. Now, that load rating is actually higher than the load rating for this alloy wheel, so that's good to know that the tyres won't give in. Now, after that we have a letter. This is the speed rating. Now, being a four-wheel drive tyre, it's not going to be massive. The S is a speed rating of 180 kilometres, which is a lot more than I ever plan on getting even close to with these sorts of tyres on the car. Now, when we look at the other side of the tyre, we've actually got the max loads here written in layman's terms, 1550 for single and 1400 for the dual use. Now, above that to the left, you see this little symbol here. This is a 3-peak mountain snowflake. This just means that it's passed certain testing, so it's suitable for snowy conditions, which is more related to these tyres being sold in Europe and North America. It's it's not going to affect my life here in Australia too much, but they are good in snowy conditions. One of the last things to look at is after your DOT, you'll have a bunch of random letters and numbers that don't really mean much for us in Australia, except for the last 4 numbers, 0923. That means these were manufactured in the 9th week of 2023, so sometime in late Feb or early March. This is important to look at when you're buying second-hand tyres. You don't want to buy tyres that are 8 or 9 years old, for example. Lastly, there is some information on the makeup of the tread and the sidewall and how many plies they have, but take all of this with a grain of salt because manufacturers come up with all sorts of ways to make these tyres stronger. For example, I've seen that these tyres, although they have a 2-ply sidewall, they actually overlap and fold them back, so it is thicker in parts that are more likely to be staked. All of these numbers can't always be taken at face value because manufacturers do all sorts of different stuff to make their tyres thicker or stronger. When I was looking for tyres and wheels, I thought that Bob Jane had the best website for a number of reasons. They give you the price, unlike Tyre Power, for example, where they ask you to put in a quote or call for a price. They just give you the price on the website. On top of that, I found that Bob Jane had the best filtering system, especially when looking for wheels, which is what we'll look at next. There's a few ways you can go about figuring out what wheels your car has. If you have a tyre and wheel company, for example, I like this website better than the others, you can go wheels and search by vehicle. Now you'll see that it starts to filter results and you'll see that it is going to show you 17x8s with a 6 stud pattern, 139.7, but the reason I don't like this is because it won't suggest other wheel sizes besides the ones that come with the car. Now if you type this into Google, ignore that one, go to this website here. You can get some really good information on your car. So heaps of information here. You got your center bore, 93.1. You got your bolt pattern. It even has the torque settings, but what is handy here is that it actually tells you the other model comes with a 255/70 16. So this shows me that I can drop my car down to a 16 because the brake calipers and the drive line, the hub and the axles are the same across all the models. Another way you can do it is if you have a brochure for your car, you will have all the different wheel sizes listed here, and you can see that the XT badge comes with 16s, the XTRs come with 17x8s alloys with a different sized spare wheel. Now with this information we can search wheel size if we know what size we want. The size I'm going for is 16x8, and the reason for that is because I've chosen to go with a 265 tyre. So you can't fit any tyre on any rim. So if you search in something like this and you'll find tyre size calculator, shows acceptable rim width range for the tyre size. So this is one way to go about it when we're working from the tyres first. So I know that I'm going for a 265, 75, 16, and here we have our minimum rim size is 7 inch wide, maximum 9 inch. So the 8 inch is right in the middle there, and this changes depending on how big your profile is. There is a flip side to this, and this is the opposite where you put in a rim number and it'll tell you your minimum and maximum, but again this is dependent on the profile. So you can see here it's got 265s. It only goes up to 70, but you can actually fit a 75 ratio on the 265s, as we saw in this other calculator here. So if you have rims already and you're trying to choose new tyres, you can use this calculator here. If you're buying a whole new set of everything, you can start with your tyres and then figure out what rims suit those tyres. Another way to go about it is to go to the manufacturer's website, type in your model of car, and it tells you here, PCD, the OE offset is 55. They recommend using P45 wheels, which are hub-centric and require no CBL. CBL is a ring that adapts different bore sizes, but they recommend not using one and using something with a bore of 93.1. If you click on any of these wheels, it will tell you all the information you need to know, PCD, the OE offset, center bore measurement, and it even has the vehicle wheel load rating as well as the new wheel load rating. So the Raptor large cap, there is a 16x8 here with an offset of 45. It has a wheel load rating of 1150. This is what I have purchased. So that's another good way to get all the information you need, is through a website like this. It's got all your factory offsets, your PCDs, your bore size. It even has the OEM load rating, and this handy note here saying to use P45 wheels that don't require a CBL. With that information, we can start to use this filter, which is a really good system. You can filter alloys or steels, and you can get the center bore that you want. This is a steel wheel with the correct bore sizing. There are two alloys here with the correct bore sizing as well. This dynamic steel wheel would have also fit, positive offset of 40 and a load rating of 1200. These two wheels are a perfect fit and they have a really close offset to what I need as well, P45 and P40. Stud pattern is a 6 pattern. They call it 6/139.7. That is the theoretical diameter between these 6 bolts here. So we have 6 bolt pattern, 139.7 mil apart. The other number that you need to know is your centre bore. That is the size requirement for the centre actually to come through. You can get larger wheels than your centre bore number, and they use CBL rings or hub spacer rings just to match that because you want a tight fit obviously. With the CSA Raptor wheel, there is also all sorts of information on the wheels themselves, such as the load rating, which is 1150. It is higher for the different offsets, but for this 45 offset, it is 1150. Down here we have the rim size, 16/8, the PCD 139, that's the 139.7. We have the model of tyre, and lastly, what appears to be the manufacturer date. Now, in my use case scenario, I actually decided what tyre I wanted, which is how most people will do it. You'll decide on the tyre that you want, and then you'll find a wheel to suit your tyre. So I knew the overall diameter I wanted, and I wanted to drop to 16 to get just that little bit more sidewall. Now, I knew that the car could take a 16-inch wheel because the lower spec models of the BT-50 did come out with 16-inch rims. If you want to figure out what wheels can go on your car, another thing you can do, drop your spare wheel and have a look at the inside of the rim. It'll probably say on it 55 or -40 or whatever the offset is. So when we talk about the offset, what we're talking about basically is how far off centre the mounts are to the centre of the wheel. So if you looked at the front of the wheel and cut it in two, the offset is basically if it's 0, the wheel mounts exactly there. If it is positive, it pushes to the outside. If it is negative, it pushes inside. So if you're looking at the front of the car, positive offset means the wheel is mounted here. So there is actually more of the wheel inside. So if you want a wider stance, it's actually a negative offset because the majority of the wheel then comes further out. So what we've got here is a Mazda rim and it is 230mm wide. The centre of that would be 115mm. If that is where the mounting took place, that will be an offset of 0. The offset on this is actually quite high. It is +55, which pushes the wheel inboard. So you see that line in the concrete? That is 170mm. So it's 55mm off centre, which was 115. If it was a negative offset, you would have a wider stance. This is where the wheel mounts, is quite far off centre. The actual mounting position is over here, and that's what the +55 offset means. The new ones that I have are +45, so the wheel sits ever so slightly out, about 10mm per side. If you have a spare rim, you can figure out what your offset is. So we've got a 55 offset here. This rim is 17/8. This car actually had quite a high offset. It is 55 from factory. So I was looking for something to match as close as possible. As you saw with my car, they recommended using a P45 wheel. So basically what we're doing is maintaining the factory offset as much as possible. So they're 55, these are 45. It's really close to what we had before. So in theory, these wheels are sitting 20mm wider overall, 10mm per side, left and right, than I was with the factory wheels, but it's basically the same. So we put the same stresses on the driveline, except for the increased weight, and there are no surprises to be had. So there's a lot to consider there. You can't just choose whatever rim size you want, because you do have things like brake calipers that get in the way, and you can't always just choose whatever offset you want because you can get rubbing on the inside of the wheel guards at full lock if you stuff up the offset, and you don't want to change it too much because you might put different stresses on the driveline and the car that the manufacturer hadn't actually accounted for. For most people, I'd recommend either talking to a specialist if you want to make big changes, or just keep it as close to the factory setup as possible. In the end, I went for these CSA wheels. After finding out what wheels went with the BT-50, I used the Bob Jane website and I had a look at some steels and some alloys just to get a few different results. If you jump on the CSA website, you get all sorts of information. It even tells you the load rating of the factory wheels. They have it listed there as 955 kilos. Mazda told me 925, so I'm not sure where the discrepancy comes from, but we'll say it's about 950 kilos. I've gone from about 950 to 1150 load rating per corner. That just gives a little bit extra security. The weight of these wheels is actually not listed on the CSA website, but I did find this number here on the Bow Repairs website. I think it was 12.27 or something. It'll be on the screen. Now I do have a spare rim of the factory alloys. I actually had 6 wheels, so we can compare those here. If we have a quick look at the numbers here, you can see the CSA Raptor wheel is heavier by about 400 grams or 470 grams, even though it is 1 inch smaller in diameter, and they have the same width. That just alludes to the fact that it is a better construction and it is stronger, which we can see at the bottom in the load rating. As for the offsets, we lose 10 mil per wheel, so the stance of the vehicle will be 20 mil wider, but that is not going to affect anything too badly. Now the reason that I went for alloys instead of steels is because even though it costs a massive amount of money, I'm already going and adding unsprung weight here with the tyres. I wanted to minimise the amount of unsprung weight with the wheels. Now Bob Jane doesn't have the weights, but if you look around different tyre shops, you can see the weights. Here we have Bow Repairs. They list this wheel as 12.27, and I believe that is accurate because it does actually change as you make different selections. It's not just stuck on 12.27. And Bow Repairs actually had it cheaper than what I got it for as well. As far as those steel wheels, they are about 15 kilograms per wheel. These are accurate. You're looking at about 2.7 kilograms of difference per corner from going with the alloys compared to going with the steels. These being the 2 wheels that would have fit perfectly with a high positive offset and a centre bore of 93.1 or 93.2. The alloys are actually stronger than the steels per kilogram, so depending on the make of them and how good quality they are, they can be stronger than steels, but the difference is if you do mess one up, you're not going to smash it back into shape. It's just, it cracks, and that's the end of it. That's not an issue for me because I carry the 5 wheels. I can carry 6 on the back of the canopy if I want to. For now, I just want to prioritise the unsprung weight being as low as possible for reliability, and I also want to prioritise fuel economy. The alloys keep the car lighter, it's easier for the car to drive the wheels, it's better taking off, it's better braking, it's more reliable, it's more fuel economic. I'm probably never going to crack one. If I do, I've got a spare wheel to put on. If I was, say in 10 years time, crossing the Simpson Desert or something stupidly remote like that, then it would only cost me $700 to buy 6 sets of steel wheels and get someone to change it over. I think for most people, steelies are good because they are so much cheaper, probably $200 less per wheel, and they can be bent back into shape. But for me, my priorities lay with all the things I mentioned before, and the likelihood of me ever cracking an alloy is so incredibly low that it's not really something I feel like I need to worry about. Although both tyres are 265 wide, the tread pattern that hits the ground is not 265mm. That's the total width of the tyre. On the left we have the Falken Wildpeak. We have 216mm as a contact patch. The tyres are actually wider, about 224mm wide. In regards to height as well, they're not always exactly as you would calculate with the aspect ratio. It's hard to measure because the tyre is always higher in the middle, but it's about 770mm in diameter. The Falken Wildpeak, the height is about 800mm, so it's about 30mm wider in diameter. But the measurements don't always match what you would think they are because there is different tolerances and stuff like that in the width of the tyres. Now with the Falken Wildpeaks on the scales, we're getting a total weight of 33.7 kilos. So if we take off the weight of the rim as advertised by Bow Repairs for this style of rim is 12.27 kilos. So the tyre weight for the 265 75 16 is 21.43 kilos per tyre, total of 33.7. Toyo open country all terrain with a Mazda 17-inch factory alloy, and we got 32.6 kilos total there. So unsprung weight, we've added 1.1 per corner, which is 4.4 kilos total. Another with the spare, so 5.5 kilos added to the car. Now I've got a spare rim here, which I'll weigh, and then we'll know the difference in the weight of the tyres compared to the rims. So the 17x8 factory alloy from Mazda, 11.8 kilos. That means a brand new 265/65/17 Toyo open country all-terrain is 20.8 kilos. Okay, that's about it for the wheel and tyre selection guide. Hopefully this has been of some help to some people. And you can see there are different ways to go about it. If you're doing an entirely new setup, you can start with your desired tyre width and diameter and then find wheels to suit. There's lots of online resources for doing that sort of thing. There are charts and calculators. If you already have rims that you're happy with but you need new tyres, then there's also a calculator to see what sort of tyres and different profiles will fit your rim. On top of that, you have the tyre size comparison website, which gives you a good visual indication of what your tyres might look like compared to what you have now, or just to compare a few different options that you are considering. Now, just because I chose something or recommended something doesn't mean it's the right choice for you. A lot of people like steel wheels and a lot of people like mud terrains. I don't think either one is better than the other, but there are different styles of tyres and wheels to suit different people and the different driving conditions that you put your car through. In regards to the load rating, the wheels at 1150 each. With all four corners, we get a load rating of 4,200 kilograms. Tyres are 1550, then we have a load rating of 6,200. So the tyres are nice and strong and the wheels are way stronger than they need to be. GVM for this make and model of car is 3,200 kilos and the current weight of the car is about 2,730 kilos. With this being one of the last things that I actually change on the car, that is very close to what the final weight of the car will be. So we've got heaps of leeway there for the load rating with the wheels, the tyres, and we've got a bit of space there before we hit GVM still. I was really happy and a little bit surprised that we only added 4.4 kilos in unsprung weight, but that is part of the advantage of going with some good quality alloys. Now, even though they are 16 by 8 and I changed from a 17 by 8, it is a little bit heavier just because they are a little bit stronger and they offer a better load rating than the factory Mazda alloys. The rim accounted to a 470 gram increase per corner, and with the tyres we saw a 630 gram increase per corner, which is expected because although we have the same width and another all-terrain construction, we are increasing that profile, so we do have more rubber to play with. Speaking of which, we get a 3.55% increase in overall tyre diameter. We've gone from 777.6 to 803.9 in overall diameter, close to it anyway. I actually measured a 770 to 800 change, but where we've gained a fair bit is in the actual sidewall because we've reduced the rim size to a 16 and our profile has gone from a 265/65 to a 265/75. So that profile has actually increased by 15.39%. The total cost of those tyres was $1,592. Keeping in mind I did get one for free due to a special. For the wheels I paid $1,680, but I could have got them cheaper if I'd shopped around a little bit better. Now, I'm not going to make any comment about how the tyres drive or anything like that because I can't pretend to know anything about them after only 4 or 5 days on the car. Need to give it a good 30,000-40,000 kilometres to really see how good they are and see if they get any noisier as the tyre wears down. At the moment they're very quiet, but most brand new tyres will be quiet. If anyone has installed 235 85/16s on a similar style of car with a similar weight to this, I'd love to know how they operate in the wet on the road and how good the traction is. I would like to try out 235 85/16s one day just to see how the skinnier tyres operate, how it affects the fuel economy. But that would mean going to an entirely new rim width again, which would be a really big expense. So I don't plan on doing that anytime soon, but one day I might drop to skinnier tyres. Now we'll just jump to the end screen with the Mazda BT-50 build weights and costs. Thanks for watching. So in this video, just go through which tyres go with width car by doing 5/5. Set my correct fuel distance so I can get the bigger tyres all I've met. And you'll see how you're a speeder. What wheels went with the Beats. Easy one, you stud, and it was with a Mazda. So you can check out our website, look up performance. Econ will be a lot quiet. There are charts